Friday the 13th follows a group of teenage camp counselors who are murdered one by an unknown killer while they are attempting to reopen an abandoned summer camp with a tragic past. Prompted by the success of John Carpenter's Halloween, director Sean S. Cunningham put out an advertisement to sell the film in Variety in early 1979, while Victor Miller was still drafting the screenplay, and there was a bidding war that ensued over the finished film, ending with Paramount Pictures acquiring the film, while Warner Brothers secured international distribution rights. And Friday the 13th, this is something very interesting because, like, but after watching it and realizing it and putting a lot of thought into it, I realized why. Initially the film was divided. There was some people loved this movie, some people thought there was a lack of pretty much everything. I will say I do love the film's cinematography. The score is, the score is very very 80s. Um, there are, but you know what? Let's actually divide this movie. All right. So I love Friday the 13th on how, like, it started the whole franchise. It explains the origin of the horror icon Jason Voorhees, who's not really a villain who's not really the killer in this first film, um, but it's actually his mom. It's actually his mother, Pamela. It was, Friday the 13th was one of the first slasher films to really popularize the genre and put it into mainstream pop culture. The idea of an unknown killer attempting to murder the camp counselors in Camp Crystal Lake, is a very interesting idea. I do like the poster. I do like the poster for the film. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, a bit creepy, and I thought the direction was pretty good. Not great, but pretty good, by Sean S. Cunningham. Like I said, the cinematography looks really good. One of the creepiest settings, Friday the 13th does have one of the creepiest settings in all of the slasher films, a campground. This has also become a popular setting in future horror films, later down the line. Um, the scene in Pamela's memory that shows young Jason Voorhees drowning is pretty sad and fucked up. It's just like, instead of like helping this poor boy, Jason Voorhees would never have become a serial killer if these camp counselors, instead of like banging and having sex with each other and doing drugs and alcohol and what young people do, the outcome would have been very different. Let's put it like that. There's a lot of unique and gruesome deaths in this film. It has a great soundtrack that was composed by Harry Manfredini. I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced his last name. While most of the acting is cheesy and it isn't all that good, Betsy Palmer's they did a really good, puts out a really pretty good performance. Surprising when you consider that Betsy only did the film for the paycheck and thought the film itself was complete shit. There was some great practical effects. I mean, it came out in the 80s, so this film came out in the 1980, exactly 1980, so expect the effects to be pretty 80s, for the time being, including the death scenes. Despite being a dream, the scene that shows Jason's rotting body attacking Alice was like pretty scary, and I thought like the movie was gonna end, but no, he came out and like it was a nightmare. It was it was a it was a nightmare, but it was pretty cool. Um, while the special effects were great for the time, they haven't aged all that well. You can see in the famous, arrow through the neck scene that the neck is clearly fake. While having Jason's mother as the killer in the first film was a good idea, she would have had a bigger impact if she was revealed earlier on and interacted with the characters more. Um, and because I mentioned at the beginning of this video the success of John Carpenter's Halloween, it is known for copying that movie. This movie does copy that film, which came out this movie came out, Friday the 13th came out in 1980. The first Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, came out in 1978, so like 2 years before. And throughout the film, it's implied that the killer is someone with lots of muscle and with a male-like body, but in reality, it's a character with a much weaker build and someone we haven't seen nor heard of up to this point. And there's a lot of padding. There was the overly long scene where Alice makes and drink cups of coffee, the sequence of Alice finding a snake in the cabin and the teens all banding to kill it does very little put bad in the one time. Unsurprisingly, it wasn't in the script and was a random suggestion by Tom Savini. Marcie and Jack's talking in the thunderstorm seems like a little flimsy attempt at a character moment, with Marcie talking about an ominous dream that was supposed to foreshadow that something bad is going to happen. But since Annie and Ned have already been killed, this does nothing more but just pad the film out, and just it's just another reason to extend the runtime. And there is a missed opportunity. Many people have pointed out that the film would have been better if the scene where zombie Jason Voorhees rises out of the lake to grab Alice was in fact the ending, since it would have worked as the perfect sequel hook and twist. Unfortunately, this was ruined by revealing that the scene was just a nightmare, a dream sequence. It also whips off the ending of Carrie, which came out in 1976 and doesn't even make sense in the context of the film, since unlike Carrie, nothing explicitly supernatural happens or is suggested to have nothing, ignoring the sequels where Jason really is undead. I felt like the movie could have just ended right there with the zombie Jason rising out and grabbing Alice and pulling her underwater, and the movie, I thought that would have been a perfect ending. But no, it was all a nightmare, and it just kept going. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So yeah, that's pretty much all I managed to point out. Those were all the points that I managed to find. Half of them were pros, the rest were flaws that I think could have been better, or would have been better if it was just cut out of the film. But anyway, Friday the 13th, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Thank you so much for taking time to listening to my review. Please like and subscribe, because when you subscribe to my channel, you'll be helping me by a ton, and that would really mean a lot to me. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. Peace.